Hello, my name is Elizabeth Rossi, and I am a graduate student in the Applied Informatics program at Stony Brook University. Today I am going to be addressing the most effective training techniques and best practices for electronic medical record implementation by using supporting peer-reviewed research and the personal experiences of those who have undergone EMR implementation in their own healthcare organizations. What are the most important factors that affect training? EMR implementation strategy. First, the strategy used can affect how training is conducted, and then, when should training be included in discussions about the implementation strategy? Next are training methods. Which one or ones promote the best practice, and what are the benefits of integrating super users into the training model? Vendors. We will address the question, are the trainers supplied by the vendor working to achieve the goals set forth by the organization? Post-go-live training or support is an important factor that is relevant to the effectiveness of training. The subtopics of post-go-live that I will be going over include follow-up training, ongoing training, and post-go-live support. The training domain is an important aspect in the classroom-based training model, which I will explain later in this video. Time, money, and human resources are all factors that an organization has to consider when creating a training plan. Finally, I will go over the importance of leadership to be able to delegate tasks while still being available to the training team and users to answer questions and provide support, always realizing that problems can arise out of the blue and keeping up a positive attitude. Now let us talk about some of the different factors that affect training and how these factors come together to make up the most effective training methods and techniques. A healthcare organization implementing an EMR system needs to determine how to roll out their systems. This can happen through either big bang or slow roll. Big bang is when all components of an EMR system and all departments in a hospital setting go live at once. Slow roll is when parts of the EMR system go live, so in intervals instead of all at once. Each of these rollout strategies can affect how training is conducted. For example, training in Big Bang is one huge project undertaken at once, but after the big project is complete, all that has to be done is maintenance. Training in slow roll occurs in intervals, which allows for training to be done per go-live. But this might create confusion for those users who jump between departments and need to adjust to one department being electronic-based and the other being paper-based. Now, in regards to when training should be included in the implementation strategy, typically, training is put on the back burner in regards to when it fits into the overall EMR implementation strategy. Based on his personal experiences at Southampton Hospital, a small community hospital located in Southampton, New York, Mike Gillen believes that training should be a part of the EMR implementation strategy discussion early on.
I think planning for training should have started earlier than it did.
Okay.
I came into the project halfway through, so it was also at the same point where we started to think about education. It was clear that there wasn't, any real decisions made on how we were going to train anybody.
Right.
I think you really need to start that planning phase at the same time that you begin planning the rest of the project.
Having the extra time to create a training plan is vital to training success, and if there are any technical issues with the system or equipment that is discussed in those early stages, training leadership can contact the appropriate support services to fix problems before the actual training event. It is essential to address that there are different types of training methods. These include web-based training, which is instruction delivered over the internet. Web-based training can either be instructor-facilitated or self-directed, self-paced. Instruction can be delivered via learning portals, tutorials, and audio and video learning aids. Classroom-based training is when users are taught in a classroom setting with computers available to them. A trainer is in charge of teaching them about the relevant operations and uses of an EMR system. Then there is role-based training, which is training that is targeted to a specific group of users. For example, separating training for staff nurses and emergency room nurses because they have different workflows and will use the system in different ways. Finally, a scenario-based training, which is training that is developed with the help of persons in the departments of the hospital. Through the help of those services, a scenario can be formulated to give users a sample situation that relates the use of the system to their unique workflow. Carmen McCoy, the former training coordinator and assistant director of EMR training at Stony Brook University Hospital, Eileen Newell, who works in nursing education as the director of professional development at Southampton Hospital, and Mike Gillen, the assistant director of IS at Southampton Hospital, all suggest that the type of training that is implemented depends on the needs and learning styles of the end users. Therefore, a blended approach of the different types of training methods promotes best practice.
I think that it really depends on the end users themselves, on how they like to learn. And what I find is offering both is probably very successful. Because it is a lot for them to learn. So if we had web-based training, they would come in maybe knowing a little bit more, and the classroom setting then would be more productive. If you're starting from scratch in the classroom, you have to build that into your time. And 8 minutes is all it takes for you to lose somebody, right? And so it's the elevator speech. So I kind of like that if you're doing a web-based training, you're meeting a lot of the younger people like that. We have an older nursing staff in our department, and a lot of them don't like web-based training. So they're getting more used to it because we're offering it a lot more, and they're finding that it is beneficial. But it's preference. So I think you have to offer a couple of different ways.
Okay. The use of a blended learning format has been proven effective through previous studies. One study that took place at Kaiser Permanente, Mid-Atlantic states, used the blended learning method to conduct training. 2 classes were designed, one that focused on chart review and managing patient-level data, or problem lists, and the other focused on documentation and order entry, or medication lists. Short lectures and demonstrations were combined with hands-on exercises to allow the users to acquire new skills. Scenario-based exercises were also incorporated into training. Users were also given a quick reference guide and keyboard shortcut template cards to reinforce what was learned during the training session. The findings of the study indicated that the blended learning method was successful because, as you can see in this box and whisker plot, which is showing the change in performance after training for both training participants and non-participants, training participants had an increased use of the medication list and problem list after the blended learning training. So what can be taken from this study is that the blended learning method proved to be more successful in training users how to effectively modify problem lists and modify medication lists than training methods that did not incorporate blending training. Again, a little bit of everything can be beneficial. As we saw in the previous study, classroom-based training allows for hands-on time using the system. This type of training tends to be more productive if the trainer demonstrates one aspect of the system and then the users interact with the system based off of what the trainer had just demonstrated. Also, having a proctor walking around, making sure that all of the users are on the same page during the training session so as not to disturb the overall flow of the lesson has proven to be effective at Stony Brook University Hospital. Research also suggests that users prefer training methods that have trainers nearby and accessible to answer any questions and provide support. Also, having some kind of video or even web-based training before or after a classroom training session has proven to be effective for Southampton Hospital. Not only does a web-based training plan appeal to the younger hospital staff, but it familiarizes users with the system before classroom-based training and reinforces what they learned about the system after classroom-based training. An example of a collection of learning reinforcement videos is STARS by Stony Brook Medicine, which provides a library of videos that helps reinforce the knowledge learned in the classroom by end users. According to the findings of the blended learning method study, and another study that spoke about criticism of training that is not rooted in users' needs or their actual work practices, role-based training is essential. Users want to be sure that they are spending their time wisely and that the training they are receiving is relevant to their workflow and daily tasks. In other words, they want to be sure that 2 hours spent in training was worth their while when they could be performing other tasks that they believe are more pertinent to their jobs at the hospital. If scenario-based training is possible, then it should be provided, as users tend to respond better to scenarios that they can relate their daily functions and tasks to. However, a lot of time and resources are required to create this type of training. For example, if a nurse is hired to conduct this type of training, he or she would have to speak to each service to develop different scenarios for training for all of those departments. Super users are very important for the successes of training to be ongoing. Super users and champions should be users with advanced computer skills. Also, these champions should have advanced knowledge of the workings of the EMR system and become embedded into the organization to give support to the training staff. It is important to understand that classroom-based training and other training methods can only do so much to prepare users for using the system on the floors. Therefore, quality champions become irreplaceable resources for user support to help address problems and issues on the floors when users might become frustrated because now they are not only working with the system but attending to patients. A study that used Kaiser Permanente clinicians indicated through the use of a questionnaire that end users typically turn to super users for help with system problems. This is another reason why super users can become immeasurable assets to a health organization, because they tend to be the most approachable resources for end users. I will go into more detail about this study in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the vendors. Creating a good working relationship with the vendor, specifically the vendor's trainers, is important in creating the best training experience for the end users. Ultimately, the vendor knows the best ways to create a curriculum for teaching their system. However, it is important for an organization to get a full picture of the vendor's trainers as well as make sure that those trainers are on the same page as the organization in regards to the training goals. What I mean by this is first, resumes of the trainers should be acquired by the organization to determine who will fit in best to achieve the goals of the organization has for training. Also, there should be an orientation for all of the trainers, those in the organization and those outsourced. All of the trainers should speak with one voice on behalf of the organization and teach one way of using the system to reduce confusion among users. Also, perhaps most importantly, is that all of the trainers should understand that even if they do not agree with the way their system has been customized by the organization, they cannot speak negatively about the organization, because then that negativity is heard by the users and taken out to the floors and generates overall negativity about the system and training. On top of that, trainers should admit to not knowing answers to questions instead of giving inappropriate answers that may confuse users. At the same time, the trainers should still write down the questions they cannot answer and then get back to the user after consulting the organization for the correct response. Post-go-live training has been proven to be more important in the effective utilization of systems than initial pre-go-live training. A study conducted on Kaiser Permanente affiliated clinicians in both ambulatory and inpatient care demonstrated the effectiveness of proficiency training on clinicians that had already undergone pre-go-live training. This training was delivered by super users, as they were vital in the continuum of education. Training included sessions on functions of the EMR that consisted of computerized physician order entry, documentation, and lab result retrieval. The way the class was conducted was the super users would teach how to perform a specific task, and then the clinicians were allowed to practice what they learned. There were also instructors available for one-on-one help during the sessions, and a questionnaire was given to the clinicians that participated in the study before and after training was conducted. Overall, this Pathway to Proficiency course conducted on the Kaiser Permanente clinicians received overwhelmingly positive feedback according to the questionnaire. Over 90% of those who responded in both the ambulatory and inpatient groups strongly agreed they were happy that they participated in the program. Over 90% in both groups strongly agreed or agreed that the program enabled them to use the EMR more effectively. Therefore, the results of the study conclude that post-go-live ongoing training and support can significantly improve clinicians' self-perceived efficiency with the EMR. Follow-up training or ongoing training can be a part of post-go-live training and support. Let's take a look at Southampton Hospital's strategy for post-go-live follow-up training.
Did you offer any follow-up training to the nursing staff after the initial training and go-live date?
I think that we did. I think we had open sessions towards the end.
Towards the end, yeah, we did have some open
I
sessions.
think we had like 2 weeks maybe that you had dedicated where people could come in and practice, ask questions.
Okay.
I don't really remember how many people came or took advantage of
Yeah,
that.
I know there were a few that definitely were, back for a second time.
Yeah.
After the go live, we really haven't done a major retraining of everybody yet. I think that's kind of,
What Lisa and I did in the nursing department was we had open forums, that's what we called them, and we had block times. So we would take 3 hours, in the evening, let's just say, and the staff would come into the classroom. We would set up and they could bring their questions and we could clarify or validate, find out what the problems were. And it was very interactive. And it was wonderful, but the thing was, we just felt like we weren't getting enough people. We would get like 8 people. And so we started to, in the beginning, we did it structured, like every other week. We would schedule time to do that. But as time went on, it was less and less people coming. So we felt like, we're really not getting the masses,
Right.
And then we do a nursing skills day. Lisa had a table at the skills day, and that's really where everything came out as far as how the system is being used, because when we have skills day, you have all different nurses. So you'll have OB nurses, you'll have emergency room nurses, PACU nurses, and everybody does use the system differently, which is really a challenge in and of itself to remember who's doing what, how are they supposed to be doing it.
Right.
And so her table was really extremely busy. She was a non-stop talker, and it actually it was very helpful because it really gave us the ability to clarify, and they were further along in using the system, and that makes a big difference because once they understand how it works, now we can really get into putting that clinical aspect into your documentation. And I think that's kind of where we are right now in our full use in nursing anyway of how the system works and how it should work. And this is another thing I learned was you can really build habits very quickly and workarounds right away. And so you really have to have your eyes open for that. Because once that happens, it's really hard to break it. And I can see that some people have that already. They already believe that that's how we taught it. And it's like, no, we didn't do that.
On the other hand, Carmen McCoy indicated that Stony Brook University Hospital did not have follow-up training, but instead had ongoing training, which was a part of the training plan from the start. Classes were open to all users who felt that they needed more training, but an added bonus was that ongoing training was centered on supporting the users on the floor by providing necessary resources around them if they had problems or questions about using the system. Studies suggest that plenty of on-site support, including technical and training support ready to address problems immediately, is essential during the first weeks of implementation. For this reason, hospitals set up command centers, where experts who know how to fix and build the system reside to address any issues or questions regarding the software or hardware. Southampton Hospital's command center after go live was set up in this way, where users with concerns or questions would have to call into the command center to receive help. We are now going to look at a user from Southampton Hospital and hear about her experience with this use of a command center.
Yeah, and then when we did go live, as I said, we didn't have a super user, or the super user that we have didn't feel that she had much more training than we did. And we repeatedly called for assistance, and were really kind of put on the back burner of being helped.
Okay, gotcha.
Even to get onto the system, I had to change my password 5 or 6 times, and then ended up having to go down to their headquarters center, which was in the basement, for them to do it.
Okay, so you had to go in search of the...
Yes, I had to go down there, and after repeated phone calls to them. And then finally, when we did get someone to come up and help us, at that point, this was like late Tuesday, I think, they realized that we needed help. So someone did come up and spend a lot of time with us on Wednesday.
As you heard from the user, a super user was present in her department. However, she indicated that she knew no more about the system than the end users did. This is why training leaders should be sure that super users have advanced knowledge about the systems they are using so that they can help end users during and after go live. By taking that extra step, this end user would have saved time and could have had her questions answered in a more timely fashion. Stony Brook's command center model had supporting rings. What I mean by this is that after go live, Stony Brook had a command center set up like the one at Southampton Hospital. However, there was more emphasis on addressing any problems or questions with the system on the floor first before reporting to the command center for assistance. During post-go-live support, the command center dispatched runners, or ACE red vests, to each unit. These people provided visuals for the nursing staff so that they knew they could call them over if they were having a problem with the system. If the runner could not answer the question or solve the problem, a subject matter expert, an individual with advanced knowledge of the system software, was called in, and then finally, if the subject matter expert could not solve the problem, and it was more of an issue with the system itself, then the command center was notified, and IT would then be patched in to address problems with the software. This type of model is very effective because it also allows for the trainers themselves to be rounding on the floors instead of waiting in the command center. When the trainers are on the floors, they can catch any workarounds before they become a problem, and they can address any needs for further education. Use of a training domain is a factor that affects the flow of training. Making sure that the training domain is working properly is essential in a classroom-based training setting. It is important that, before a training event, the training leadership identify training domain data, load requirements, and participate in testing and maintenance to support the training program. If the training domain has gaps in the information provided by the system, then certain aspects of training will not be accessible for users to follow along and practice, thus creating user frustration. According to supporting research, human resources, money, and time are huge factors that affect the design, flow, and sometimes overall success of a training plan. It is important to note that not every healthcare facility is the same. For example, Southampton Hospital is a small community hospital, and Stony Brook Hospital is a large academic hospital. The available manpower and time for training became an ever-present issue for Southampton because their limited staff was already working on other projects regarding the EMR implementation along with their other jobs at the hospital. Due to this dilemma, an organization must ask, if there is not sufficient manpower or time, how will my organization be able to provide adequate training? This leads to discussions regarding if there is enough funds in the training budget to hire more trainers. As always, having more money to spend allows for not only the organization to afford a possibly better EMR system altogether, but to afford the best trainers to help in the training and education of the system. It can be difficult to convince executive leadership to spend more money for the IT department because this is not a department that makes money for the organization. which results in hospitals hesitating to spend money on better systems and trainers. Time is a major factor that impacts a training plan, not only from the standpoint of completing the training plan as a whole, but knowing how long it should take for training to be conducted in a classroom for the end users. Meaning, leaders in training need to consider two things. First, there is never enough time to complete every goal set forth by the training plan, but deadlines still need to be met. Leadership must be able to delegate, oversee, and take part in making sure that the training plan is as efficient as it can be, despite time constraint, to prepare users for go live. Second, research suggests that training that is either too early or too late in relation to go live will waste resources and raise frustrations. However, training staff from Southampton and Stony Brook stated that if an organization is not ready and will not put out an effective training plan due to complications with the system or lack of adequate resources, then it is important for that training department to acknowledge what it needs to hold off go live. Time is also a factor when you pose the question, how long do we keep our users in a classroom for adequate training? It is important to factor in whether or not people have basic computer skills, the attention spans of adults, how busy a work week can be, and how many weeks before go live training should begin. The best way to determine the answer to this question is for there to be a discussion between the trainers and clinicians in regards to recommended training times. Overall, there is a constant struggle for balance between budget, time, and human resources that an organization has to consider when designing and putting out a training plan. Speaking to Carmen McCoy gave me some important insight on what leadership strategy is best when trying to push out training in preparation for a go-live. First, a leader needs to recognize that everything that can go wrong does go wrong during go-live, and that there is a ripple effect of problems that can arise throughout the go-live stage. Good leadership addresses these problems by coming up with new solutions. Not only that, but inspiring the training team to believe and take ownership of the tasks ahead. It is important for training leaders to remember that leadership is not a dictatorship. Good leaders do not sit in their office barking orders and ignoring complaints. Training leaders should always be present to not only their team but the users of the system. Knowing that leadership supports the team and takes the time to address any problems or questions about the EMR system creates a more positive experience for the training team and end users. It is also important for leaders to delegate tasks to their team. The best insight is generated from a group effort, minds coming together. Finally, and perhaps most importantly for leadership and training, is to stay positive. As I said previously, a lot can go wrong during the implementation of an EMR system, and a good leader must be able to pacify the team when a problem arises and then come up with a game plan to fix what went wrong. A positive attitude can go a long way in what can be a chaotic and frustrating environment. So from all of this collected information, what has been determined about the most effective training methods and strategies to promote overall best practice? First, a training plan should be a part of the EMR implementation strategy discussion early on to allow for more time to create the training plan depending on the implementation strategy chosen, whether it's big bang or slow roll. And also address any technical flaws with the system that might need to be fixed so that training can run smoothly. A blended approach of training methods supports best practice because each user learns a little differently, and using several different training methods allows users to have classroom-based, hands-on, role-based experiences with the system, as well as web-based training before and after classroom training to familiarize the user with the system, as well as reinforce lessons learned. If there is enough time and resources to create scenario-based training, then it can prove to be very beneficial for users because this type of training presents them with a sample situation based on their unique workflow to help them learn how to navigate the system. Super users should have advanced knowledge of the system and be efficiently utilized by end users on the floors who need immediate assistance in navigating the system while treating patients. Trainers from the vendor should be utilized for their training skills. However, an organization should look into the experience of each trainer by requesting resumes. An orientation session should also be given to all trainers to explain the goals of training for the organization, express the need for consistency in what is taught to all classes, and what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior towards the users. Though some follow-up training and Q&A sessions might prove beneficial for clarification and addressing some usability concerns, ongoing training, or training that is a part of the training plan from the start, is proven to support best practice. This type of training was centered on the idea that there is a continuation of training after the initial training period. To add to this, it is important that post-go-live command centers have rings of support on the floors to address any user confusion on how to navigate the system, and then, if there are software system problems, the command center IT staff can be called in. If a training domain is being used to demonstrate the uses of a system, the training coordinator must be sure that the appropriate information is included in the system. For example, if physicians are being taught CPOE and relevant information about the patient or medication is not included in the training domain, then this will set back the training for those physicians. Human resources, time, and money are important factors in determining the design and success of a training plan. Organizations must formulate plans to utilize the human resources, money, and time they have to complete training in the most effective way possible. In other words, organizations must be creative when formulating the training plan with these factors that are unique to their organization. And finally, leadership is the key to success. A good leader must be present to his or her team and users to answer questions and help with ongoing training. They also must be ready to come up with solutions to the always unexpected issues that plague a training project. Also, leaders must be able to delegate the tasks of the training plan. Robert Challoner, the CEO of Southampton Hospital, said that leaders are only as good as the teams they lead. So a leader must be prepared and willing to listen to the ideas and insight of others, because even if everything goes wrong, if a leader is backed up by an excellent team, any challenge can be overcome. I hope that this video has been both entertaining and insightful, and following these proven most effective training techniques and best practices should help get your healthcare organization started on the right path to creating the best training strategy possible. Again, my name is Elizabeth Rossi, and thank you for listening.